Okay, so the Christmas spending has happened. It's the 26th of December 2023, and now we have to think about, did we spend wisely for the past week or so, or are we in debt? And how can we deal with that in 2024? Why not start creating your plan for your debt even now? I'm asking you to join me in moving to a space of being debt free in 2024. All right, and these are some of the tips that I would like to share with us. The first thing I'd like to advise us to do is to have an account of our debt. Okay, and that means your loans or something you have on hire purchase, any of these types of debts that you have. You're owing someone for some money that you borrowed from them, or if it's a commercial loan that you have taken, whatever form of debt you have. One of the best things to do is to first, in order for you to decide how you're going to get out of it, is to see where exactly am I with my debts right now. This is something I did when I was resigning from my job in 2020. I started to go through, how much debt do I have and what was my plan going to be on how I was going to get out of it, because now I was not going to have a steady income from my 9 to 5. So we're going to do that. We're going to take a piece of paper, a pen, or in a notebook, and we are going to write down the amount of debt that we have, the amount of debt that we have to pay, at least in a week, in a month. It depends on how often. I'd say we can go with a month. So how much debt do you have to pay, and how much can you pay on it in a month? And for how many months? If you pay that amount, how long will it take you to pay it off? Now, I just want to share a few tips with us on how we can get out of debt. And, sometimes when I think about debt in the Bible, I think about Jacob, who had to pay the debt or the bill in order for him to get Rachel and stuff like that. And then, his father deceived him, or his supposed father-in-law deceives him, and then he has to work some more. So that story is in Genesis chapter 30, and I just want to share this with you. One of my first tips, after you have decided, okay, this is the amount of debt that I have, is you're going to have to work some more. So if you're currently on a job now, you're currently doing a certain amount of work now that brings in income to you, and it's not covering your debts, it means that you're going to have to work a little harder. So it means you're going to have to put in some more effort. You're going to have to do something more so you can get more money, and then you can pay your debts. The first thing I want to share with us is to put in some more work. The next thing I want to share with us is to cut back. And when I think about cutting back, I think about the story in the Bible about the wise manager. And in that story, basically, he was squandering off his master's spending and things like that. And then he was about to be fired, so he goes on to do something to save his butt, as we would say. So this is in Luke chapter 16, verses 1 through to 13. And we can hear the story of the shrewd manager who decides that, hey, if I'm about to lose the income that I have, if I'm about to lose my job, and I'm going to need money, I'm going to need help, this is what I'm going to do. So what he decides to do is to reduce the debts of his master's debtors. And with that, he was hoping that they will reciprocate the favor that he extended to them and provide for them when he is in turn unemployed. So there's two things I can see here. One is you cut back. Okay, he definitely did some cutting back. One of the things you want to do when you're in debt is to pay attention to your spending. What am I spending money on? Do I absolutely need to spend money on this? And Christians, I know you hear this all the time, but you really need to try it and stop just hearing it and saying, I know I need to do it, but not doing it. Let's really show up for ourselves in 2024. It's not going to happen unless we are the ones who put in the work. I know we pray, and I know we ask God to do this for us. We ask God to wipe our debts and things like that. And there are instances that God has the power to do that, but there are times when God is calling on us to put in the work. Why are you spending unnecessarily on shoes and clothes when you have more than enough to last you for the next 6 months? Like I would say to people, if you see me wearing one pair of shoes for 6 months, or you see me wearing one pair of shoes until I can afford 10, don't envy me when I can afford 10, because I was wearing one pair for the longest while. So there are certain things that we can cut back on that we should do, make that sacrifice and say, you know what, okay, I am going to, when I go to the supermarket, I usually like my little ice cream treats and things like that, but I'm gonna save that $23 that I used to buy my Klondike bar. This is actually very personal for me. I love Klondike. So you're going to cut back on that. You're going to not eat your Klondike for a couple of months, maybe a couple of weeks. And you're going to keep saving that $23. If you save that, 4 or 5 Klondike, that's $100 worth that you already saved. And you can use that to go towards your debt. Okay, so cutting back is always one that the financial consultants and advisors will share with you first. And we know this is basic knowledge for us right now. Cutting back on the unnecessary things that we just really do not need at this time. Focus on getting the right foods that you can afford and living within your means until such time when you can splurge. Okay, so the first thing I shared about was finding an account for your money, making sure you know exactly how much debt that you have versus what is your income or how many streams of income you have. Once you're able to give an account for where your debt is going to be, then you want to work a little harder because the income that you were making or you're currently making is not sufficing for the level of debt that you have. So you're going to need to push in and put in some extra work. All right. If it is that you want to sell something, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that takes up your time. You can shift towards trying to get yourself a passive income, which is one of the types of income I spoke about on this podcast. You can check it in the list below. It's called 3 ways to earn money, or 3 types of income. Check it out. So you maybe want to do some passive income, something that doesn't have to take too much time from you. If it's a quick turnover, maybe you have to get a second job, or you need to do some selling on the weekends or sell some products, whatever it is. But you need to put in more work, just like Jacob had to put in more work to pay for his debt. Then you be like the shrewd manager and you start to cut back on some things. You're supposed to be getting this amount, so you're going to cut back on that and save that cut to do something else or pay towards your debt. All right, so that's what the shrewd manager did. Now, something else I got from Luke 16 is the shrewd manager, again, he reduces the debts of his master's debtors so that they will reciprocate the favor. If we spend our finances helping others, and I think that's one of the ways that certain cultures of people are able to get by in life. It's this exact method that they use when they are in a position and they have a certain amount of things or income and things like that. They give to their friends, they share with their friends, they use it to help others. They create that kind of relationship with others. They provide for others. So when we can do that, and we are now in turn in a difficult situation, for example, like being in debt, then these other people are likely to show up for us and say, you know what, when I didn't have or when I needed it, you were there for me. So here's $100, put that towards your debt. Here's a $200, put that towards your debt. And this is why I talk about having friends in high places or just having friends in different areas of life and having certain relationships with them, because this is what the shrewd manager decides to do. In Luke 16, it says, make friends for yourselves by means of this honest wealth, so that when it is gone, they will welcome you into the eternal homes. By providing for his master's debtors, the dishonest shrewd is creating friendships. Mutual fraud is probably not the best way to build relationships. Just a disclaimer right there. It's not the best way, but apparently it's better than not building relationships at all. You want to build relationships as far more effective for gaining security than building wealth itself. I want to say this to you again. You want to build relationships that are far more effective for gaining security than building wealth itself. So yes, some of us just want to build wealth, accumulate, and we just keep it to ourselves and things like that. And then inflation happens, or world crisis happens, or disaster happens, and then we lose all of it. And then there's no one else to sow into our lives. And this particular tip is a way of showing us as a community of people, as believers in Christ, we really need to help each other. We really need to sow into each other's life. We really need to show up for each other and build the relationships with each other where we can depend on each other. For example, I'll tell you this from my preschool. There are persons who have come and stepped in and said to me, okay, I want to sow this into your preschool. I want to sow that into your preschool. And it's not always money. They could, if the person has materials and I need materials, they're going to sow that in. Whatever resources, because we always think that wealth is ascribed to money. But whatever the resources were, these people can say to me, here you go. So these are my tips for us for getting out of debt in 2024, and let's start working on them now. First thing you want to do is keep an account. Get an account. How much debt do I have? How much money am I making? What's my income versus my debts? You can, how much liability I have, how much assets I have. Check my book, The Essence of Life, God and Me. I explain about assets and incomes and liability. Once you have done that and you realize that your income is too low to cover your debt, it means that the first thing you're going to have to do is think of, how can I increase my income by putting in more work? And that could be by doing a passive income, which means you invest in something where it makes money for you while you sleep so you can acquire that. And sometimes the passive income doesn't necessarily have a quick turnover. So if you need a quick turnover, you may have to do something like a recurring income instead, or something that takes your exact time. Might get a second job, but it would just be for the period of paying over your debt. So putting the work, once you have decided this is how much debt I have to pay, add in some extra work. The second tip I want to share with you is cut back on the unnecessary spending. Cut back on the impulse spending. Create your budget and be strict with your budget. Be disciplined with your budget. Stick to it. All right, and this is for all of us. We're going to do this in 2024. We're going into 24 with the mindset to get rid of our debt by the end of the year, or maybe less than that, depending on how much debts we have. But this is what the attitude we're going with. And I'm telling you, if we can stick to it, if we can be consistent and be disciplined, we can be debt free. And after you have done that, whatever bit of wealth or whatever bit of resources or whatever it is that you have, build relationships with persons where you share it. Don't just accumulate wealth for yourself and for you alone, but do it with others. Share it with others. Do it with the intention to sow into other people, to build proper relationships, because at the end of the day, once you would have done that and you come into a place where you have a stick, you can depend on these relationships to help you in that situation. I know these tips are gonna bless you. I want to give a special shout out to Italy. Thank you for joining the Essence of Life podcast. I see you. I also want to give a special shout out to my WhatsApp group that we're creating, and thank you so much for those of you who have accepted that you want to join the WhatsApp group to sort of kind of be like my support team for this podcast. I really appreciate your love, your support, and your genuineness. Also, I am working on putting some of these podcast episodes on YouTube as well. So if you're not able to catch up on all of them on Spotify, you can check them out on YouTube also. Don't forget to give me your feedback. I look forward to hearing from you. C'est bon? Sounds good.